Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Ball Over Passion. I'm your boy, George V underscore AFC. And we've got Chris and Curran here. We got a full house to talk about the game, the big one, the Manchester United game. What a game. I think there's been a lot of lies spoken, I'll be honest, about the narrative of the game. People talking how close it may have been. I really don't see where that you would have got that information from, especially on the rewatch. I hope that we can get some screenshots. We can talk about it because that was a dominant performance throughout the entirety of the game. And I think it was men versus boys, although a score line may have been close. And sometimes that happens. I just think that this team has really laid a marker for what it's going to do kind of down the line to close the season. Because when you have a look at just the pattern of play, the amount of goals that we were able to do, also kind of what's not spoken about is the response to those goals. I think going behind, twice and then evening the score and then coming back in and not changing kind of your idea about how you were going to approach the game was excellent to see. Eric Ten Hag is very salty today, talking about cutbacks being the only reason to score. Well, sir, that is the form of attack that we use. So yes, do you want us to carry the ball in the net? I don't know, but first we'll go with Chris, mate. How you doing? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I don't know how any Arsenal fan, unless obviously like you have a big major issue, isn't doing good after watching that game.
Mm.
I heard fans were crying in the stands. Like I lost my voice over the weekend after that game. That the way we won it, even though I would have loved to like pummel them 4-1, 5-1, I don't think like it could be like a bigger announcement for how good we are,
Mm.
for how good we are. To like because we broke them down for a good 30, 40 minutes. We had a lot of chance there and catch a shot on target. We had a couple chances. Erdegaard shot blocked in the box. Like we had a couple chances leading up to the end, and it was great to win it like that. Even with the VAR, it being Eddie for me was the great part because a
Mm.
lot of people were playing him down. Oh my, we're finished without Jesus. It's going to become a top four battle without Jesus. Now he has more goals than Jesus. So what can you say about Eddie? Like 2 goals, Saka now becoming only the third player in Arsenal history to score three on the bounce against United. Um, I think it was a great game for narrative. Like 11 points clear of United now with a game in hand. Like it was. Per-
That for me doesn't get spoken about enough, Chris. Like really quickly, we were talking about it kind of off stream a little bit, where everyone's focused on the title race, and I get that, and we'll maybe have a little bit of a chat about what this means, of course, towards the end of really the analysis here. But fundamentally, when you've got 11 points ahead of your rivals with the game in hand already to third, that is a massive swing of points at this stage of the season to have. And I really think like when you start to talk about Champions League and when you are looking forward to kind of what this means for the team when you get to talk to targets this early, basically guaranteeing yourselves Champions League football, it's huge. It's something that Arsenal haven't been able to do for over 5 years now. We haven't been able to say, let's talk to our targets in February, March that we want to sign in the summer, guaranteeing Champions League football. I think that's an incredible thing to have. And when you do look at it, like, look, our fixture schedule is very nice in terms of the upcoming 10 games. Of course, we have Manchester City coming on the horizon after Everton, but beyond that, you're looking at teams that you could get a very favorable matchup towards, and then you start to see what points we could do. I think you could be looking at a guarantee of Champions League football by March, which is absolutely incredible. And then just talking about what we saw on that pitch there was absolutely dominant. I mean, I don't know where this idea.
Toe to toe. Like that's what I was hearing after
Yeah,
the game and seeing paragraphs of people praising United. Like I honestly couldn't believe it. Like there was no toe to toe. There was a 20-minute period where we had 80% possession in the game. The second half we had 65% possession. So it definitely wasn't toe to toe. I think it was a very dominant game and probably the scoreline runs narrative, goals and assists, they run narrative. Um, Rashford scored early, and that is what made us think we're in the game. And I think our final pass was poor in the first half, and that made it look like United defended incredible. But I
mm,
just think we were very wasteful in the final third in the first half. And players like Ben White, even though I love the player, I don't think he's ever had one good performance versus Rashford in his whole career.
well, even against United, just in general, I feel like he
Yeah,
struggled
he
at Leeds
doesn't.
and Brighton. It is a team. It's a bogey team for him individually,
Yeah,
and it happens. But I think beyond that, I think Martinelli, who again A little bit underrated. I mean, look, he was poor by his own standards, but I mean, even just in general, I thought our wingers were incredible. There was a graphic
What?
going around with Monday Night Football about how many touches
No
both
touches
wingers
in the
had.
box. Yeah.
But I think a lot of it had to do with the press, that really what we were doing and kind of what the expectations were of Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw, who, by the way, Luke Shaw's been like the best left back in the league so far this season, arguably. You can maybe throw in Zinchenko in there, of course, but Luke Shaw has been performing to the standard of the best left back in the league, and Saka made him look silly. Like let's not call a spade without acknowledging how great we've done on their fullbacks. But at the same token, I think that how their fullbacks set up wasn't great in allowing us the space to really attack down the wings, because I felt that we really exploited that. And they weren't diligent in their press. We talked about in the preview how their fullbacks don't like to support their press, and that would be a big thing. But we did tweak a little bit our press going into the game here. But before we go into like all those tactics, first I want to talk to Curran, mate. How you doing? How did you view the game?
Um, Very satisfying. I mean, we all know the hatred for United that all three of us have. So it's very satisfying to not only win, but win in it with a dramatic last minute winner. I think the game for me was satisfying because of how you can see that even though in the moment it felt like it was a very much frantic, oh my God, old school Man United, and Arsenal game, it really wasn't. It was very much a controlled 90-minute performance. And when I put the tweet out, I put a point in saying frantic win or controlled performance, and this was very much a controlled performance. It was, I think, a game where United had moments, and they scored off a long shot and a mistake at a corner. I think that you can't underestimate how much their shots came from situations where it was kind of just forced turnovers, which is good. I mean, for them, fair enough. They got a foot in and got forced a turnover. But at the end of the day, it wasn't like they were going, wide overload cutbacks or going pressing us for 90 minutes in our own half, or pushing the ball wide and really trying to get the ball into the middle. Weghorst, look, his defensive opportunities were more noticeable than his offensive ones. So you're thinking, hang on a second, if it's a dominant performance or a back and forth game, you'd expect your centre forward to really be in areas where they could be pushed to succeed, and they really weren't. Weghorst, his main thing was pressing. His pressing was decent. He won, I think, 5 defensive duels. Fair enough. He did very well in that regard. But in terms of actually being a striker, getting into the box, affecting play, no. And that was a case where a lot of their players, they did well in moments. They did well turning the ball over and getting the ball into areas where they can maybe get a shot off or get a lucky header and put it in the back of the net, which we'll get into. But at the end of the day, wasn't much really that I could say, okay, United, this 10-minute period, this 15-minute period, they really, really came at us. There wasn't really.
Well,
Not
really
much.
quickly, just on this topic of control, because I kind of look, I obviously I put a tweet out and I was arguing in group chats from the jump, and I think Chris, we were talking about it even in our own group chats where a lot of people felt that that first half, when we talk about control, okay, I think a lot of people are using possession as a synonym for control, and that's not necessarily correct, because look, were there moments in the first half that we were loose technically from some players? Absolutely. Were there times where, I felt that we made easy turnovers? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you lose control. And a loss of a turnover isn't a loss of control, because you need to pair that territory with either isolated 1v1s, or you need to pair it with high quality chances in the box. And fundamentally, Manchester United only achieved 3 touches in the box in their first half. So for the supposed first half that they had really good possession, they only managed to enter the box 3 times. Our 4-4-2 block was immense, and I felt that we were very intense, making sure to retreat back into that block, even on those moments of poor turnovers, you could say. And I really think that it's a little bit overstated. I mean, look, I am somebody that when you have a look at Martin Odegaard, for me, I can't criticize him for being vertical when it's something I've wanted to see from him. And I felt that, look, there were times that I felt like he could have maybe made a different pass in the first half. He definitely slowed some things down in the second half, and we felt that effect really well. But I don't think it was necessarily a problem. I liked us being vertical. I liked us penetrating and playing forwards. I didn't think that was the issue per se. And it was just coming down to execution. A couple good passes and those moves come off, and everyone's screaming about how great we have been. And again, some of the highlight moments, especially when you look at Odegaard's elastico trick, which we'll talk about, a little bit down the line. But when you're looking at it, it's him being vertical. So I mean, that's part of your critique, and so you can't say it didn't work in the first half, but it did in the second, just because you saw a greater amount of possession. So I think when we talk about control, the one thing I would urge a lot of people to talk about really is to pair your territory with high quality chances or a multitude of 1v1 isolation moments. That is control. When you sacrifice territory as well as those other things, then you can say that we've lost control. But really, when you talk about moments, it's really a lot better to say that you've lost possession, you've lost turnovers, but control, a little bit of a step too far.
Well, we spoke about in the preview that there's many teams that dominate the game on and off the ball and control the game on and off the ball. Like Newcastle, they control territory. Like in not many games the whole season has anyone ever had any type of control in their box, for example. And Newcastle control games off the ball, and United didn't control the game. I think for any point in the game, they didn't control that at all. I think there was a period where the ball was just bouncing back and forth, and there was a lot of transitions, and that's how Rashford really scored. But I don't think at any point I was scared. Oh my God, United are coming back with attack after attack after attack. We didn't see that at all, and then we continuously attacked in the first half, where we scored like less than 10 minutes after United scored. So at what point did they dominate the game? Because for me, I didn't see that at all.
No, I didn't see it at all either. And we have also got some stats to back it up, really. And I think we should just get into the general play first, and then we can get into some of these screenshots to talk about the game. We'll talk about the press. But guys, in terms of like the running XG, which again, I'll just everybody watching, if you don't know what this stat looks like and what this graph is, it's essentially a measure throughout the match of how dangerous the locations are in terms of your likelihood to score. That's really what XG is. And XG measures the chance in terms of the shot location and how high quality or what's the probability of you being able to score. And so, as you can see here, there really wasn't a moment where Manchester United spiked ahead of Arsenal. And despite their moments, again, when you look at the first half, so you look at the first 0 to the 45 minutes mark here at the graph, it's really quite distant in terms of who had the better half here. And I think even the Marcus Rashford goal, when you look at it, it's very much against the run of play. We'll talk about how we conceded that chance. But when you kind of go throughout the match here, overall, Manchester United scoring 2 goals off of 0.3 XG compared to Arsenal's 2.87, it doesn't paint a very pretty picture. Then when you start to look at field tilt, which again is another statistical metric, just to kind of review for those that don't know what field tilt is, it essentially measures the amount of possession that's found in the final third. And when you pair that with kind of the running XG, you can really start to see how dominant Arsenal camped in Manchester United's half. And beyond 2 or 3 minutes or 2 or 3 intervals of about 5 minutes here, Manchester United really didn't take a lot of time in Arsenal's half. And when they did get into Arsenal's half, that didn't result into a penalty box entry, bar potentially a little bit of a period from the 53rd minute after our second goal to our dominant possession at the 60th minute mark. So that was probably the worst moment of the half, and maybe right before halftime. But even in those moments, again, I want to say in that first half, they only entered the box 3 times. And so when you're actually talking about control overall and you have a look, really, I think this paints a much better picture for people that were wondering on the toe to toe accusations, really, here. Because, again, this kind of measures it gives you a summary of all the shots that happened. I think 25 shots to 6. 5 versus 4 on target, possession almost 60% possession. Looking at the amount of chances that were in the box, I believe that Manchester United in total entered the box about 12 times. But when you have a look at Arsenal, the amount of shots that we got off in the box was incredible. And then when you combine that even with the start, I really don't understand where this was close. This theory that, this was a close game, I felt um, was a little bit narrative driven, if people are being honest. And a lot of people are really quick to give credit to, I think, Manchester United, and I'm not too sure why. I mean, ultimately, what we can call as a spade a spade. It was not a close game. It was a close result, but a close game is definitely not something that I would describe um, this game at all with. But Curran, like, what did you make kind of the overall difference? Because again, it wasn't even just Manchester United fans saying this. There were a lot of Arsenal fans that said that the first half wasn't great, and I remember arguing with people even immediately in the middle of the game. That wasn't the case. I don't know what's happening because
No,
we're
I
clearly
mean,
watching a different game. But like, what did
yeah.
you feel was the difference? Was anxiety in terms of a title race skewing people's perception on what's close or not? Or did you feel that there should be a little bit more credit given to Ten Hag's ability to disrupt the possession in the first
Mm,
half?
I wouldn't say either. I would say there's an anxiety amongst the fan base of both sides. I feel. I think less so in Man United's, but more with us. There's an anxiety that always comes across in these kinds of games because of the 8-2s, of the 5-1s, of the 6-0s, of the amount of times we got smacked. And I think this is a perfect comment to bring up because there's a lot of nervous energy, especially in the fan base, because they feel like we went behind, that we didn't really dominate the first 15 minutes. I don't understand that when we clearly did. I mean, there was from the first minute, I think 90 seconds in, we had already got a corner. I mean, we were on them from minute one. We were just there. We were able to really push them back and push them into their own half. And there was a reason why they couldn't really get out because of not only our press, but also the inability to find runners. I think that's a major thing for them. They were unable to find Rashford, and Anthony wasn't able to provide the pace on the other side to really hurt us on that left hand side to get from behind a Gabriel, for example. So if I'm going to sum it up, I think the main thing is if you look at the if you look at how we've done the this first half, it's very much a case of looking at it and looking at what we're doing in terms of in between the center line and their goal, because our press was excellent, the ability to turn over the ball and the ability to really get chances off. I think the one chance they had was their goal, as you mentioned, three touches in the first half. So, and that's the main thing for me.
Well, I think it was look, we'll split it up into differences. I think, by the way, our press was slightly different. I felt that we were very narrow. And in terms of pressing from the front, look, this is the MVP of Arsenal this entire season, right? When you have a look at it, what was different between Arsenal of last season and this season ultimately is the press. And that's really what has won us so many games and made us so dominant ultimately. But I think as opposed to necessarily adding somebody kind of in the front line with Eddie and Kedia. What we had was a little bit more of a diamond press. Like I noticed Martinelli and Saka were very narrow in their pressing, making sure that the entry passes, whether it was Lissandro Martinez as a progressor or Martinelli making sure to be straight onto Aaron Wan-Bissaka. It was very much a case of having the wingers quite narrow, and Eddie would put a lot of pressure on David De Gea. And then Martin Odegaard would supplement the press, but we almost seemed okay with Ericsson and Bruno receiving in the pivot. And it was because they were unable to really find people between the lines, that Manchester United weren't able really to get out from that press. But I think despite, Ben White having a poor game, what he wasn't poor in was off the ball and in that press. Was very supportive. And so when Bukayo Saka would come inside to make sure to mark Lissandro Martinez, I noticed that Ben White was really diligent, making sure that he was quick up to Luke Shaw if the ball ever went to the left. And then likewise on the right, Martinelli would target Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He was definitely a pressing trigger. But we made sure that Zinchenko and Granit Xhaka were definitely really quick to support the inside out ball, whether that was McTominay who liked to drift to the right, or whether it was Anthony trying to get the ball. I think that we went very man to man, which we've done quite a bit in this press this season. But it was interesting to see us rock up in more of a diamond press up the front too, because we normally add a second, and there's a lot of times that we would find David De Gea and Bukayo Saka operating as a two, and we press in this 4-4-2. We've seen it quite a bit this season, but I think we've seen more of a diamond press, and that did come a lot more from the fact that um, I think we didn't trust or we didn't really value the pivot in Ericsson and Bruno to progress the ball, nor did we with McTominay. I think McTominay would go up a little bit in the pitch, but they didn't have enough players between the lines in their first phase to really get out. And we put David De Gea under pressure. We know how poor he is kind of in build-up. But I think what we've seen from this press is, Curran, I'll ask you, who do you think was the superstar in this press? Because I think when you have a look at it, there was a lot of areas, particularly the fullbacks with Manchester United, that has been a strong point for them in their run to how good they were. But I think it was fundamental to show how much touches that, Bukayo Saka, Martinelli had. Something went wrong. I have an idea about what went wrong from their perspective. And I think Aaron Ten Hag, if you noticed, every time that there was a build up or there was a goal kick, he was frantic on the timeline. Something wasn't working. And I think it was because of this change in the diamond press that I was talking about earlier. But what did you make kind of our press kind of to start?
Firstly, if Ten Hag was going crazy on the timeline, I don't exactly know where that would come from. But if he was going crazy on the touchline, there we go. But yeah, look, the main thing for me, as you mentioned, the diamond press, with basically both our striker and either our wide side wing back or Erdegaard would push into that role. But for me, it's Nketiah. I think the way he was moving, basically shutting down De Gea, making sure that he was being rushed into decisions. You saw that they weren't really he wasn't finding Lissandro a lot. He was being funneled into Varane, or even trying to switch out. There was one instance in the first half where he's just tried to switch it into touch because he's not got the time. The main thing for me, I think, was Nketiah. I don't know about you, but that was how I saw it. I saw Eddie really, harassing him, getting him into situations he doesn't want to be in, rushing him on the ball, not really allowing him to be that sort of having that time on the ball that he needs to compose himself, because he's not great on the ball himself. So for me, it's Eddie. I wanted to know what you thought. What were your considerations with the press? I mean, obviously, I agree with the whole diamond situation. The role with Erdegaard not being so strict on the whole DM like we usually do, that 2-1 press. We're pushing him up a bit more, making sure that it was a different situation for Alessandro as well as Varane, because they needed time to get De Gea out of possession at times.
I'll tell you what it did is it was extremely disrespectful by Mikel Arteta, because we gave them a ton of space to build if they had enough players to build. And what we did notice was Lisandro Martinez was their primary method of getting up the pitch. And what we basically kind of tasked was we challenged the trio of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Raphael Varane, and Scott McTominay to get out. We left a lot of space down there, and we made sure that we were touch tight to their wingers, because we didn't want an out ball to outwear course to kind of bring anybody into play. That was one thing. So we made sure that Thomas Partey had a little bit of a man marking job there, and we stopped access into that backboard to set off the Rashfords and the Antonys out on the wings. But one thing that we did do by having a narrow press with the diamond is we forced, with Bukayo Saka coming a little bit inside and asking Ben White to really step to their fullbacks, we basically killed Luke Shaw and Lisandro Martinez from operating together to really create something. And I think Ericsson has maximum 50 minutes left in him with legs to really affect the game. And then after that, he's done. And I think the holes in Manchester United's squad was basically asking, can that right-hand side progress? Because we're going to stop your left-hand side. And that was why Saka White was really tight. Eddie Nketiah, if you notice, even when he was cheating, he was making these banana U-shaped runs, and he was almost allowing Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Raphael Varane to get possession of the ball. And then after that, it was really a quick hit, because once they got possession, we would basically cover their outlets and ask them, can you play through us? And they couldn't, especially down that side. And we really stopped, Luke Shaw, and we really stopped Lisandro Martinez from really being able to dictate play. I think Manchester United really missed Diego Dalot. And I agree here. But what Delo gives you is that first pass in the first phase. Okay, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, what he gives you is not that in terms of distribution. And I think when you combine that with Raphael Varane, and of course McTominay on that side, who, by the way, that wouldn't have changed with Casemiro. One of the biggest myths that I said is I always felt that the midfield spacing in this game would be a problem for Manchester United. I felt that our press was extremely disrespectful, but it did challenge them by giving them space. And what we did was we said, okay, Manchester United, you build. You're on this good run. If you can build, then build through us. And we weren't as touch tight in their pivot as I expected us to be. I thought we would do this high press that we've been doing all game, where we basically would match up their sixes. We've been doing that all season. And what we kind of did was we were very happy to play the second ball. And we didn't believe in Manchester United's ability to get from their 18-yard box into our final third well without going long. And so we did see that. There was a lot of hopeful balls in the first opening exchanges. There was a lot of times that I think Manchester United played through balls in an attempt to really skip this, because our press basically forced them, if we weren't able to build through the right, then you had to go through the middle. And I think, well, the one difference that I'll make here is Casemiro. I don't really agree with this statement, particularly because when you have a look at it, he didn't have any options to hit. And I think a big thing right now is when you are having a look at it, Bruno, Ericsson, Wout Weghorst, Scott McTominay, no one was able to really receive in between the lines. And had there been a Casemiro, you would have asked Odegaard to not be disrespectful and step up to him man to man. I really don't think a lot of people realize how disrespectful this press was, advertently or inadvertently. But Chris, I wanted to get you in on the action here with the press and stuff. What did you make kind of some of the changes that we did? And how we hurried them. Do you agree with kind of the stuff that I'm talking about in terms of the press being a little bit different, and how that maybe affected play?
It was definitely different. I think the main thing was to force De Gea to make a choice, and when you force him to make one of two choices, he kept making the wrong one. He kept putting the ball off the pitch. Really, he kept trying to play that pass that Ramsdale really specializes in, that clipped ball to the fullback, and he couldn't consistently do it. But I think with the press, you have to gamble on one thing, and in a big game, especially when a team can hurt you, you have to gamble on one thing. And I think we gambled on the fact that they wouldn't be good enough in build-up. So we put two men on the edge of the box a lot of the time. Sometimes Odegaard would be on McTominay or Ericsson. Sometimes he wouldn't. But we'd always leave Shaw with a bit of space. And he'd try to see if De Gea's looking up, to see where he's moving. But De Gea wasn't quick enough with the ball, quick enough with his eyes to notice that movement. And it was something that we expected, something that we explored. And for me, when we saw early in the game, like maybe 10 minutes in, the crowd just started jeering him. Anytime he had the ball, you could see he was frustrated.
Well, because in the first 7 minutes, he had that really stupid play out of bounds. He
Yeah,
received it off
to Luke Shaw. He tried to ping a ball to Luke Shaw off the pitch.
Yeah.
So everyone from minute 10 to minute 90 started jeering him, because we realized he wasn't comfortable. And it's not like, it doesn't take a genius to realize that De Gea isn't comfortable with the ball.
No.
And then with Casemiro, like, for me, I don't think it changes much in the game, because their issues weren't Casemiro based. Because one, McTominay didn't have a bad game. Two, De Gea wasn't quick enough or confident enough to play that pass between the lines to the DM anyways. Because Shaw made himself option.
Sorry, Chris, I'll let you go ahead. But what you needed is someone to drop in between the lines and receive at the top of their box. Turn, face, play. Does Casemiro do that? He doesn't.
And even if you do have someone drop there, you need De Gea to be confident enough to play the pass. But after he messed up that pass to Shaw, he just started going long to Weghorst. He wasn't doing anything else, even long to Rashford at times. But that's what you need to do at the start of the game. Your press needs to be very intense. You win the ball back and you create some doubt in a guy like De Gea when you know he's not confident. Maybe if it was a Ramsdale, he'll keep playing the same pass. Like, Ramsdale will make a mistake and 20 seconds later play the exact same pass. De Gea, very different mentality very different confidence, and the gamble worked. And you probably won't see us do it again to another team. You probably won't see us be that lenient on the movement of the DM, because we knew McTominay wouldn't pick it up and turn and swivel, but Ericsson maybe. But in the second half, they didn't even want the ball at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It was clear. Yeah, go on. Sorry, George.
Yeah, no, I was gonna bring you in actually, ironically, because I wanted to talk about freeing up space on the wide left channel. We were doing that a lot, and I had said in the preview, by the way, Aaron Saka, awareness of third man runners.
Blindside awareness, zero.
Blindside running. How many times did we highlight in the preview? And I kept saying, listen, he's a 1v1 defensive matchup, no problem. But it's not that you have to worry about with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. It's the second man running, those second man runs into the box. And guess what? Shock horror, that we exploited that with like ruthless precision in the first half. And, you know, there was even a couple times, not even just in the first minute, the Odegaard shot. And I'll go through it with a screenshot so you guys can see and have a visual for this third man running that I was even talking about in the preview. And then I'll ask Curran, you know, how you thought that we exploited that. But just really quickly, there were a lot of times in that interior space. It's Zinchenko in this moment here. But look, even when Trossard came up and came inside, we had an occupation where we were drawing them out really, really well to these cutbacks. And I think the reason that we had so much space here is because if you look at it, Odegaard is also making a position or a point to kind of drag himself a little bit free. And he's counting on the fact that we're not going to pick up these second man runs. And so that inside channel is going to make sure to play the passes inside, but we're going to have somebody wide constantly. Sometimes it was Zinchenko, sometimes it was Xhaka, sometimes it was Martinelli. Here we see it's Martinelli. And I think this is one of the things that a lot of people struggle to really have a look at is when you have this moment and everyone's crashing in the box. Granit Xhaka is running in behind right now, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and he has no idea where he is. They're not picking up anybody. And when you have a look really with McTominay and everyone's just crashing the box, they're ball watching at this point. And all they're doing is making sure to cover the Martinelli chance and stopping that cross. But no one is watching Martin Odegaard. And boom, when you see it in the next moment here, everyone crashes in the middle of the box and there's no one really meeting Martin Odegaard at this point in time. And you know what? This isn't the first chance that they had that we really showed this. I think Martin Odegaard scuffs the shot a little bit here and they make a really good block out of it. But you have a look. Thomas Partey did the exact same thing a couple minutes later, and we were slaughtering that right hand side because again, Scott McTominay and mainly Aaron Wan-Bissaka were really struggling with those blindside runners and us crashing the box. Whether it was Odegaard, Partey, Granit Xhaka, that is something that we do quite a bit, and I don't understand why Eric Ten Hag didn't have somebody at the top of the box. Like it's fine to understand that you have limitations from your player, but you really should have somebody diligently marking the top of the box cutback because anybody that's analyzed Arsenal, and maybe we can talk about how to stop Arsenal going forward. I know that was something that Mush had asked earlier, and we can maybe have a segment of that towards the end. But anybody that watches Arsenal knows that even though we get a lot of ISO moments out wide, 3/4 of the time we cut back to the top of the penalty spot, whether that's a set piece thing, whether that's an isolation moment in space. So I don't understand why no one was out there. But Curran, what did you make of kind of us constantly having space up, particularly down that wide left? I think we'll talk about Saka in another segment. He deserves it. But that was individual brilliance by Saka on the right because I think Ben White had a tough game. We really opened them on the left, and Zinchenko was critical. He ran a clinic in this game. What did you make of us opening that space on the left-hand side?
It's not just the intent, it's the off-the-ball movement. If you look at we'll get into that for our third goal, the movement of Trossard to drag his man inside. If you look at, for example, in that screenshot, if you look at a Martinelli, you look at someone, all that left-hand side was the aim was to try and isolate Wan-Bissaka on an island by getting runs behind him. We were going on that underlap whilst having someone wide, so he was constantly trying to figure out which way we were going. And I think it's smart to realize that our in this situation, for example, you can see that Zinchenko is trying to look up and receive and find out what the ball is, and you can see here that if you look between the fullback and the centre back, there we have a man there to try and basically pull a defender towards him and free up that space out wide, which is what ends up happening. So the positioning of trying to separate the channels and really get players unsure of where their man is. Because if you're on a pitch and you're looking behind you, you're not looking to really, if you're not sure where the man is behind you, that's when you're able to really exploit, because that's how you can get runners in behind, and that's how you can get runners to really get inside and really hurt you on the underlap. So to find men in space consistently throughout the entire game, and it was for the Nketiah goal. We used that trick. Obviously the second Nketiah goal, obviously as well. We also used that same trick because both were either from a cutback or cross from outside on that wide left. So I just think that there's a lot to do in terms of that isolated situation producing a lot because of Aaron Wan-Bissaka's inability to defend runs in behind and runs past his station, because he's not able to do that.
It comes down to that. And look, I don't want to kill him, but that was a big reason. Look, their fullbacks, there was a major issue. There's a structural issue there, and it really comes down to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. But as well, Scott McTominay is not tracking runners. He's not doing a good job doing that. And, even in that photo, when we talk about Zinchenko looking up, Scott McTominay is there pointing, but he's not following the Odegaard dropping between the lines. Of course, Granit Xhaka is hiding in between that center back and fullback space, and he's doing what he normally does, where he pulls markers wide, and he forces a decision making here. Where, look, yes, Odegaard drops to receive between the lines, but it's that movement from Granit Xhaka again. By the way, absolutely immense in this game, that provides the space for Odegaard to really receive in turn. And then when you have a look about freeing up spaces, another instance kind of on the right again, Zinchenko in that left-hand space corridor, really. And you have Martinelli holding the width. And where's Granit Xhaka? He's once again pulling and running in between that fullback and center back, asking questions where people just end up crashing for no good reason, and they don't pick up the men at the top of the box. And this was a problem for United all game. And it really came down to a dysfunction, really, of their fullbacks and tracking runners into the box. They just weren't able to do that. I think it's not just Scott McTominay, but, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, that was definitely a side we targeted very ruthlessly. I wanted to ask Chris, before we move on to the goal, because we did that for the first 10, 15 minutes quite a bit. Partey had a chance, Odegaard had a chance, and it was looking like a long day. But what did you make of Zinchenko's kind of role? A lot of people talk about how the second half was really something that he exploded into, but I would argue the first half, he showed his prowess here, really digging into that left-hand side.
Well, if you remember, I was asked at halftime who was the best player on the pitch, and I thought it was him. One, simply because he was very comfortable in the half space. He was comfortable out wide, but he was picking up the ball in positions that allowed Odegaard to be open. And Odegaard obviously was very vertical this time, so he was turning and facing and playing the ball to Xhaka on the wing, which is how obviously we scored our goal. But we consistently create that cutback and or cross opportunity, because even Martinelli, whose delivery was poor, which is why I said, like, in the first half, our final pass, if it was better, we'd probably score 3 in the first half. But Martinelli, his delivery was poor, and Zinchenko, I think, just consistently picking up positions where if you don't close him down, he could shoot or pick out a great cross. But if you do, Odegaard's open. And he was creating doubt in players like McTominay, Wan-Bissaka, who aren't confident. If they're pulled out, they would step. But I think when they do step, they're not aware enough to fix up for stepping. And it was something that really helped. Obviously, we did score from him doing it. He played a big part in our goal, in the first goal, for the Xhaka cross, obviously. But I just think him picking up positions on and off the ball is what allowed us to create on the left-hand side in the first half, and obviously the second.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I think that leads us into, I think it was beautiful by Zinchenko. Again, he was running a clinic for me. Again, probably man of the match. But, look, I think Bukayo Saka has a shout for that, and we'll have a Bukayo Saka segment, absolutely. And in terms of whether or not, mate, he absolutely has played this role for City. I remember when he came on for PSG in the Champions League, changing the game in a very similar role. I mean, Zinchenko definitely has done that, and he's played for his international team quite a bit with Ukraine in that high left-hand space, so he is comfortable there. But one thing that I think that he's really improved with is aerially. He's really improved his aerial duels. Zinchenko has been very good at that lately, and I think that's one thing that you don't associate with him is defensive 1v1 now, but I think he's been very strong meeting markers quick. And he's not putting himself in a position to be isolated as much 1v1. That's one thing that I really like that he's doing. And I think he put on a clinic, this
Well,
last game.
I think that's to
Sorry.
do with his awareness, though, because I think he's
Mm.
very aware of his qualities as a player, and he knows
Yeah.
if I get caught 1v1, we're done here. So you're right, his controlled aggression has been very good. He's been meeting markers in spaces where even if I get beat, there's 3-4 Arsenal players around me and it doesn't affect me at all. So he's been meeting his marker, pushing them and just running back to left back. And I think it may look like, oh, he's just running away from the door, but I think it's very smart to get the ball away from the player there. But I think Anthony went past him maybe once in the first half, and that's really it. Like, they didn't cause him any problems apart from maybe one time in the first half. And Anthony, being Anthony, produced nothing. So
Yeah. No,
he
I
didn't.
absolutely, and I think, look, it kind of we really have to talk about the Rashford goal, and this is against the run of play. So we've talked about how great the press was, and of course, look, Arsenal were breaking down to like this really narrow 4-4-2 block when United did have possession, but this came from a period of play where Thomas Partey was being slightly more vertical, and I really hesitate to critique these things, I'll be honest with you, because again, Partey being vertical is 3/4 of the reason why that Ben White overlap works. So it's not a case of me not wanting that, but it's me maybe asking him to execute it a bit better. But we'll go through some
Picking a
great,
moment. It's
yeah,
picking a moment and really trying to find when to be aggressive and when not to be. I mean, this situation
well,
here,
here, but for example, current mate, like there's no reason. I think it's the execution. There's no reason that he can't do a first time ball. And in fact, this is one reason why we break at pace so quick. And when you talk about the basketball part of this, which again, the reason I mentioned this is I don't know if anybody has picked up on the Reese Nelson comments about us really transitioning like a basketball game. This is what I think they're talking about when we use our possession to lull people into a press in certain areas of the pitch, and then we spring quickly and we make sure to get the ball in the final third as quick as possible. So I don't think this is a problem. But what I do think is a problem, of course, is when this doesn't come off and you basically give it to Rashford straight away. But the amount of space that Thomas Partey was in, it was immense, really, throughout the match. And you can kind of see this right now. This comes down to United. So, of course, he's going to want to play quick to really make use of this. But right now, he's got to pass it to Martin Odegaard. And that's a simple pass, if I'm really being honest right now, especially when you have a look at kind of who's pressuring him and who's not. So when you do have a look at it, there's no reason he shouldn't be making that pass. I'll go to Curran like, mate, like here, we're talking about him being too vertical, and people are talking about him being too vertical. But I just think the execution gets wrong here. What about you?
I agree. I think the idea is correct. The execution is wrong. I think if it's me, I'm a little more conservative. I would like him to take a touch and just square it to the other side and reset. But if the pass is open, you can see Odegaard in space there, and you can see what he's trying to do. It's just the execution comes off wrong, and it's unfortunate. I don't think Mikel would just go, okay, don't do that from now on. It's clearly just all right. We pick ourselves up and we go again. It's just very much just a mistake that he makes, and he doesn't. I think he doesn't really recover well. I think Rashford does him, and then obviously he gets his shot off. But for me, it's very clear that it's a mistake, it's an error, and you've just got to pick yourself up and go again. And you can see Odegaard after the goal goes in, he gets his hands up. He's telling everyone we need to go again. We have to get back into this game, and that's what happened. The crowd got lifted, everyone got behind them, and we got back in the game. It was a setback. It wasn't a moment of madness. It wasn't a Mustafi error. It wasn't like you know what I mean. It's very much
Yeah.
just an error of execution, not error of mentality or trying to shift blame onto others. It's an executional error, which it's unfortunate. And if you look at the shot itself, it's very much a banger of a shot. Even I can't criticize Aaron for this. It's a very good, well hit shot, 0.09 xg, very very well done, and fair enough, Rashford. This is what you can do.
Fair enough, Rashford, indeed. That was an elite piece of skill. And I don't want to take away from Manchester United, number 10 there, because that was absolutely incredible. And look, not only is Rashford ruthless, but in the vein of form that he's in, that strike is very difficult to stop. The way it bobbles up and down, it's such a great technique that he does. Look, he does do a nice little mag on Thomas Partey after he miscontrols that, but really, we crash well. If you have a look at this picture, we have bodies back. We do everything right. It is just a world class bit of play. Chris, what do you think? I mean, we were talking about this off screen as well. I think sometimes fans just really want to isolate a mistake in quotes,
Mm.
and we don't appreciate just world class play when it is world class play. Like that was just an excellent shot. No.
Or, as you said, the guy in this form taking a shot like that, because he's probably one of the best ball strikers in the league, let alone in Europe. So if you don't want anyone taking that shot, obviously on their team, you don't really want Rashford too. But as we said, you can't really count out a team with guys like Rashford from distance, Ericsson, obviously Casemiro wasn't there, Casemiro, Bruno. Like when you have these guys shooting from distance, you just have to expect it, because I said it coming into the game that you could just get a moment of madness where he just takes his track. Like he scored a knuckleball from 30, 35 yards from a dead ball before. Like not many people can hit a ball the way he does. And he put it in the bottom corner, it bounced right in front of the keeper and it was swerving. Like no keeper is saving that.
I mean, this is what we said for United for
It
years
just
now.
is what it is, really. Like for me, it was just a great goal.
Ollie was saying that with insane ball strikers, you can win matches. You can win matches through transitions and ball striking. It's not a hard formula. It's not going to take. You don't have to do tons of wide overloads and rotations and getting people into spaces, crashing zone 14 and really pushing the tempo and really creating high quality XG chances. You can just give it to them 30 yards and hit and hope, and eventually you will get one because they have the ball strikers to do it. And that's the case. That's where they think their strength came from in this game, because they have the ball strikers to do it. So it's not. I think it's a bit shocking and a bit sad for them to say that they were in the game when I think it's just emotion and pure. It's Arsenal. We can't just concede to them. It's quite
Aaron,
clear.
you had mentioned just kind of previously your analysis about Zinchenko and Odegaard getting the crowd and the team riled up after this, because this was against the run of play. Let's call a spade a spade. And after that, the heads didn't drop. And again, we had so many questions from you guys, like fans. We love you guys watching BoP, but last season everyone kept saying, why do the heads drop? Why is there a case when we do have an action against us, or when there's a goal against us, or something against that team, there seemed to be a tendency for the entire team drop 10 to 15 yards. That was not the case. And immediately we respond, what is it, 5 minutes later, I think, if that's the exact time, something like that.
It's like 5:43 or 5:50, something like that.
Yeah, it's just within 5 minutes we respond. And it really comes down to, once again, Zinchenko in that left-hand side corridor. And, of course, Odegaard receiving the ball between the lines. And, again, for anybody that's on Twitter, when I talk about Odegaard being in left-hand side and kind of transitioning there, this is a sneak peek into what I mean. A lot of people don't know why I keep saying it, but I do have a feeling he's going to be transitioning there soon. And Odegaard picks it up in this space. It's excellent in terms of our spacing right now, because Zinchenko's right with him, and I think that's really the key. You've got two people between the lines that are able to receive in any position. And then when they turn to face play right now, they're just focusing on running off the ball. And what we've got essentially is Granit Xhaka at this point. He gets the ball out wide from Martin Odegaard, and he sends in a delicious cross, but it's all about the run of Eddie Nketiah. I'm just going to put it a little bit back, and then I'll ask Chris your opinion kind of on this goal. Really, Eddie Nketiah is kind of on the side right now, and he's doing everything right. He's just hanging back. But what I really loved about this goal is he starts so wide and then comes in off the blindside run. Again, I believe it's Aaron Wan-Bissaka where they're all over the place once again.
Well, they switch fullbacks, don't they, for the corner? So Wan-Bissaka
they switch fullbacks, I think, primarily because Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Eddie Nketiah is a better aerial duel matchup. But again, it comes from the blindside run, and it really. I'm just going to go back for anybody that's not able to see, but in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see Eddie hanging off the last line. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is not scanning. He doesn't check. And I know that this is a screenshot. I know that this doesn't show everything in real time, but look, I promise you, if you go and you watch it back, Aaron Wan-Bissaka never looks at Eddie once. And he peels inside of him, and he has no idea where he is. And this is just a really simple cross from Granit Xhaka, gets another assist. I forget how many he's on now, but having the season of his life. But Eddie just comes in, and it's a beautiful goal. Chris, what did you make kind of this response 5 minutes later?
Well, for me, it was bound to happen. Like, I was very confident we'd score in the first half. Like, I had money on us to score in the first half, but I think like it was bound to happen. Like, Wan-Bissaka, he looked at Eddie once, knows he's there. Then, as soon as the cross is played, he just forgets Eddie's there and just starts walking towards the goal. I think it was very poor of him to allow someone or allow any striker, let alone like Eddie, to just ghost right in front of you. It was a great cross. It was a good link up on the left-hand side with Zinchenko, Erdegaard and Xhaka. They put the ball in and it was an easy header. Like, easy header, slot it, and then we go on from there. But for United, like, I think it was very silly to, like, when you score, the 10 minutes after you score is probably the worst period of your game because there's a lot of momentum in there, a lot of adrenaline, and the game state's completely changed. The plan has to change as well because you can't play the exact same way you played before the goal and after the goal. And for United, they just relinquished possession. Obviously, they didn't have it, but they relinquished possession. They didn't have the ball in the positions they had when Rashford scored, and we just scored from there. And then after that moment, we just went on leaps and bounds in the game, I felt. But the type of goal it was, and I think who scored it and where he scored it was great because after that, he grew in confidence as well in the game. I felt he got on the ball a lot more and he pinned Martinez a lot more because that's how Martinez got his foul. But
Yeah.
I think that was just a great header and typical Eddie because he scored 54% of his career goals in the 6-yard box, and so you can't let him be free in the 6-yard box when the ball's coming in, but he did.
And I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely, Yo-Yo, they were. And it was from a Martinelli press, who, again, people said wasn't playing well, but he was really crucial in that press because, again, he presses Aaron Wan-Bissaka to force the corner. And then from that corner position is when we see that the fullbacks make that switch. And he doesn't track Eddie in that position. And so from that corner, take it quick. And, I think when you have a look at this, Eddie doesn't do anything special, but he does everything right. And I really think that United should have done a little bit better tracking runners in general in this game. But I mean, I think this is just a goal that it was much deserved. I mean, I think we should have scored from the Odegaard or the party chances a lot earlier in the game with the cutbacks. That was probably better football, but this was just classic us doing the basics well. And then moving on from there, and you basically wrap up the first half. The one thing I will say, and I'll ask Curran, Martin Odegaard went down towards the end of the second half, and I even talked about it in group chats. I felt he struggled with a little bit of a back injury in that first half, and I think it was really a big catalyst for why we kind of sacrificed a little bit of possession right before the half when United got possession. But I was going to ask you, kind of to close the half. For me, again, I didn't see this supposed toe-to-toe dominance that United showed, especially in that first half. The possession that they did have. It was weak possession. We were in our 4-4-2 block. They only entered the box 3 times. I'm going to repeat that for people listening in that first half. So if they had possession, no problem. But if they're not creating 1v1 chances and they can't break down our 4-4-2 block, then I don't see how that's a lack of control. But what did you make kind of to close the half there? Because you've got 1-1. And we've essentially got a team talk with Mikel, I think, just to improve a little bit of what we're doing in possession, but keep the pressing going and the goals will come. What did you think going into kind of the second half and the end of that first half that Arsenal needed to change or tweak a bit?
That was tweaking. I don't know. I think that the main thing for me was just trying to be a bit more aggressive down that right-hand side. I mean, our right, their left. I think the Ben White substitution was a good one. I think he was struggling this game, and Tomiyasu came in. We'll talk about it in the second half, and he did a very good job.
Why don't you talk about it now? Because that's kind of like the transition. Ben White was
Yeah,
having a tough game, and we make that transition immediately. Tommy comes in. That's kind of what I was hoping to get at. So, like, yeah, talk about that sub.
yeah. So for me, the Tommy sub was perfectly good timed. I think I was worried that he would be a bit stubborn, as we usually say about he's quite stubborn on these 60-minute substitutions. He doesn't really like changing it too early, but he recognised there was an issue, that White was having not his best game. I'm with Chris on this. Not everything that is every bad performance is a fitness issue. He's just had a bad game. Look, maybe it's a mental thing for Ben. He struggled against Marcus Rashford quite a few times. Maybe it's something he needs to analyze and look at what he's struggling with. We've talked about how sometimes his duels out wide, sometimes he can get done at times and be a bit overly aggressive. I think in this case, it's a case where I just didn't feel like he got into the game a lot. I think that he was obviously we were doing our usual 3-2 with him going in slotting with that third centre back and then going up and trying to be the overlap, but it just wasn't clicking. And I felt like our left hand side was a lot more potent and much more available and a bit more open in that second half. And we'll get into the second goal when we do and we'll have the Saka conversation. It's the ability to Tommy to spread the pitch a bit wider. You can see Tommy taking that space out right on the edge of the touchline there, and basically playing that 1-2 with Saka that isolates Saka onto Eriksen, and then the space comes and we get that second goal. But the main thing for me is that ability that Tommy had to just do what White usually does: spread the pitch a bit more, be controlled in that first phase, and not be in and out of possession, and not be a bit stumbly and crumbly on the in possession either, as well as being able to be that 1v1 dual machine that can win the ball back if needed. He was very good in that second half, and just chalk up to a bad day from Ben. I think he's going to be he'll be all right. Just the next game he'll come back stronger. But for me, that was a very, very well timed substitution, because if he'd kept going and Ben had sort of just let his head drop a little, you don't know what could happen. So I'm happy that Mikel was proactive instead of reactive in the situation. That's the main thing for me.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, look, going into the second half, and really, that's where our dominating kind of possession really made the jump. Right? Everyone talks about how great the second half was, and we're going to be no different here. I think one thing that I will say is, with that substitution, what it allowed for is, I think that the wide men from Eric Ten Hag, and they kind of use them as inside forwards, right? So they had White Horse really drop in, and they had Anthony and Rashford be the outlets, right? What that did, though, is that they were very poor in possession, and so it allowed Aaron Ramsdale to really find Tomiyasu and Zinchenko with those clip passes that we really like to see in the second half, right? And I think in turn, what that did allow is that our wingers were able to receive on their strong foot centrally really well. United's midfield three were really worried about our midfield three, but they weren't picking up the wingers with nearly enough intensity. And so what was happening even before the Bukayo Saka wonder goal, which it was, is I just think that people were receiving on their strong foot centrally quite a bit. And we have like a little bit of a screenshot to really show that here, where Bukayo Saka started to take over. And he was really dazzling in this performance. And, his second half performance was arguably one of the best that I've seen from him in an Arsenal shirt. It was so good, in fact, that I almost want to put him up for man of the match ahead of Zinchenko. I just can't because of his consistency, but he was so good all game. He was roasting Luke Shaw, who was too afraid to even come tight to him. And that's when when you've got the betterment of your fullback, when your fullback gives you that respect of the first 2 yards. But Bukayo Saka receiving centrally was really a menace, and of course Tomiyasu receives wide on this occasion. Bukayo follows his pass, and Eriksen is doing a really poor job of marking right now. There's zero intensity, and we know that Eriksen loses his pace after 50 minutes. But this is just not good enough, because it's not just Eriksen. If you have a look at it right now, Lissandro Martinez is already running away. He's scared of the potential. He's already running away back into his block, and there really isn't too much help beyond Eriksen and Luke Shaw here. But what we see is there's an insane amount of space once Bukayo Saka receives the ball, and no one wants to go near him. He is that good right now. that nobody wants to be embarrassed or highlighted reeled on, Monday Night Football or anything. But, it happens because Bukayo says, no problem, mate. I'll pick it up here and I'll face you up. And the shot from Bukayo Saka is just absolutely incredible. Guys, this is 20, 25 yards out in between traffic, far post placing. Who says Bukayo Saka can't have strong ball striking? I've always said I hate that people keep talking about Bukayo Saka's ball striking being poor. It's not. It's phenomenal. What is poor is when he does struggle with kind of slotting a finish on the run. That's what I think he does struggle with. But this finish, when he has an ability to stand up his marker, he has a very short back lift with a lot of power, and it's deadly. He kind of did a very similar goal towards his debut goal, really, when he cut inside on the left. I think it was against a Europa League team when at the top of the box. And, he has a very similar receiving, but the way he shapes the ball here, I'll really quickly ask Chris, and then I'll go on to Curran. Like, this is a wonder goal. And then he, of course, does the Rashford celebration in the corner, destroying that narrative, which is wonderful. But what did you make of this goal? Because I think it just showed his ability in terms of not just ball striking, but his ability to get off shots so quick. There's no backlift here. He managed to get power between an entire traffic of United players and Arsenal players, and he slots it in bottom corner. It was just beautiful play. I can't wax more lyrical about this. I think this is just a world-class player doing another world-class goal. I don't know if you can really say much to United beyond Eriksen make more of an effort to go touch tight to Bukayo, but he doesn't want that. What do you think, Chris?
Well, it's not the first time we're seeing a great strike from Saka, but I think it was probably the best goal of the game. Bottom corner from 25, maybe 30 yards at an angle, bottom corner against probably the best shot stopper on form in the league. And it was just utmost confidence. He just stood him up. Really an ISO 1v1 versus Eriksen. He cut in and he knew Eriksen couldn't catch up. So he just slowed it in the bottom corner very easily. And I think it was just a sign for me, really, of where he is mentally right now. Like the confidence, one, to cut in and shoot from there, two, the celebration, to the Rashford celebration, even though they're boys and that in England. But it's just I think it's really a sign of where, because Rashford celebration is about being mentally strong. And I just think mentally he's at the peak of where he's ever been at Arsenal.
Well, he's getting arrogant, right? Like,
exactly.
You know why I love
it's something I've been calling for months and months now, and I've been saying that. Well, at the start, our best period of the games of all season, where we score the most goals, is the first 10 to 15 after the half, and it's where he's been best. Something happens to him at halftime where he just switches it on, and he's completely different to whatever he did in the first half. That first 15, he's always better, and it's just mentally, something's just great for him right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Kern, I want to go to you in terms of not just this goal, but Bukayo Saka's performance. We'll do a little bit of a segment here because, again, I agree with Chris. We both have been talking about Bukayo Saka getting more arrogant in general. I think once he makes that step, that he's always been world class for me. He's been world class for over a season now for me. But what gets him to the elite category, to that Robin territory, to those best in the world consistently, is him getting arrogant. Him saying, "Give me the ball, and I'm going to score. I don't care who's there. I'm going to score." And I think that ruthlessness and that kind of getting over, as Chris likes to say, that he doesn't want to have the baby boy persona. He wants him to really be a man and really get aggressive. And I will say I love that celebration because it says a lot. And when you talk about that Mikel Arteta clip about saying "I told you so," I don't think it's necessarily him working on this specific play, but I do think it's about him getting confidence to shoot. I don't think Bukayo Saka has been shooting enough, and that's why he doesn't get enough goals. I think he's waiting for the perfect moment, and I just think him trusting in his ability to let go from this angle, he's got that ability. Like, son, there's no reason trying, and you have earned the right to do that. So I need you to get more arrogant, and he does it here. What did you make kind of the goal and kind of Bukayo Saka taking that next step? Because I think him doing that Rashford celebration is rude. It is so rude, and I loved every moment of it.
Well, first of all, let's not forget it's the Ruben Neves celebration. I think Rashford has taken that off
No, we
Ruben
can
Neves.
call it the Rashford one because it's better. It's
Yeah,
better for
I'm
the
not. I'm
narrative.
not having it. I don't like this whole. Oh, it's Rashford. It's cold. No, it was Ruben Neves' celebration. Let's call it what it is. And look, he's popularized it. Fine, but for me,
If Rashford made it popular, it's Rashford's.
whatever, man. I don't think it's Rashford's. I think that he's everyone's been doing that celebration. He's just made it. It's his turn. It's not his. It's his turn. Let's put it that way. But the main thing for me, if you're talking about that Saka goal, I don't know if you guys noticed, there was a clip going around of this is actually quite a while ago of Arteta coaching shooting with some YouTuber or something, and he was talking about take that extra touch, get it, shift it onto your strong foot, take that extra second touch, so it gets the man and it clears the space, and that's exactly what Bukayo does here. He takes that touch. Ericsson's giving him that space, and he takes that little second touch to get it into a position where he can really hit it and hit it hard. And the second thing is I don't know if you guys realize as well. De Gea's bottle is right behind, like it's like on the side netting, and it's a fairly common goalkeeping no as to say to have that that thing, that bottle or something to aim at for strikers, because if they see that bottle they'll go, okay, I can if I can laser in on that point, it gives them a point of reference to try and hit, and Saka basically just does it. He hits that ball as hard as he can, and he gets it into a position that rifles into the side netting of the net, and it's a beautiful goal. Obviously, the way I'm trying to go back to one of the pictures because it shows so well Ericsson basically giving him that space. And if when you see the space he has, like Ericsson does not want any part of that duel. He wants none of it. Like in these two pictures, he doesn't cut. He doesn't really move at all. Saka's the one being aggressive. He's on the front foot here. He's the one really pushing that duel and pushing it into a space where he can really punish the opposition. So for me, it's all isolating it onto your opponent and making sure that you win that duel and get into a position to shoot. Because right now he's this all season he's been scintillating. He's been, what is it, something like 13, 14 goals and assists now, something like that. It's in the Premier League. Someone correct me in the comments, but his outputs there, the players there, his ability to take Shaw both directions. You don't see that in a lot of wingers. You don't see them wanting to both go on the outside as well as come inside. His ability to push Shaw back into the box to create shot creating opportunities. He pushes him back, pushes him back, and then creates the cutback for an Eddie or an Erdegaard or someone else. And this is Luke Shaw as well. This is not this isn't Brandon Williams. You know what I mean? This is a proper left back. He's one of the best in the league, and probably one of the best in the entirety of Europe. So to take him and make sure, then especially in that second half, really push him, really put him on his arse if you want. Like he's really pushed it, and even in that first half with the Mikel yellow card, you could see, look, there was 4 times he'd been fouled because Luke Shaw didn't know what to do with him. There was nothing, he couldn't. He was trying to contain him and he couldn't do it. So it's very clear.
You know what it is here. Look, I don't want to look. They're in a different section of the rebuild, but I think giving.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that the section of rebuild, because the amount of money you spend, you don't have to put them all in marquees in the first phase of your rebuild. First phase of the rebuild is getting leaders, making sure that you know where what you want to do with the core of your players. You build your core. You don't go out and spend 100 million on Anthony when you don't have a central midfield. It doesn't make any sense.
No, the decisions are self-made.
I don't like hearing that, because it's an obscene amount of money for one window, and you could have prioritized your funds better.
No, the decisions are self-made. That's not really what I'm going with. But what I was saying was the fact that they're in a different phase of their rebuild is that they're unable to really consistently press. That is something that we've seen in our own rebuild. We haven't seen the press from the start of our own team, and I think United here, it really showed kind of their mentality going into this game, thinking that I'm going to play for a draw, because nobody was pressing or coming out of the block quick. We, on the other hand, would retreat very quickly into a 4-4-2 block. We had intensity every time there was a turnover. And when there was a turnover from a United perspective, nobody was meeting their markers quick. Ericsson is just one of the many people not to do it. But I think fundamentally, when you have a look at it, Tomiyasu doesn't do much on the overlap. He's just a body there. And I think
what he does do is he gets the ball, he stretches the pitch wide. Even if he is just a body, it stretches the pitch wide and it forces.
He does, but I mean, if you're really being critical as a coach, this is crazy defensive structure. Like Luke Shaw doesn't meet Tomiyasu with any sort of intensity. Ericsson jogs and plants his foot down. There's no intensity about it. And make no mistake, Bukayo Saka has a lot to do. But I think that lackadaisical attitude to meet your markers is really what plagued United all game. And it wasn't just in this moment. It was in the fullbacks. It was in the Aaron Wan-Bissaka letting markers go. That intensity to meet and be there, be present and be at your marker wasn't the case with United. It was for Arsenal. That for me was the biggest difference. And I think when you have Ten Hag's decision to then moving on, and we do have to talk about the goal. I don't know if there's much to talk about. I'll probably let Chris run through the goal because I'll be honest with you, it came against the run of play. But I do think that Ten Hag's decision to bring on Fred for Anthony was really to combat like how much of an influence Bukayo Saka was having, because I think what the goal was to push Bruno Fernandes into the right wing slot, have Fred in there, and to really block space centrally for Bukayo Saka, who was picking up a lot of spaces kind of in the middle of the park. And that was Ten Hag's kind of response, but it didn't really work out. United's line got deeper. And then, of course, we introduced, Leandro Trossard later, which we'll talk about. But quickly, we do have to talk about the goal that we conceded, which I think was poor. We have this, little corner set up here. And we do have a pretty good job in terms of numbers and defending. Like, I think we've done pretty well typically with it. But I think Aaron Ramsdale here, he spills it. I don't think he gets enough purchase on it. I'll be honest with you in terms of the punch, just in general. I don't even know if it's necessarily a spill. Like, I don't think he can claim that ball, but he does need to punch it with some distance. But after that, Lisandro Martinez, the shortest guy on the pitch, gets the header. And who doesn't love that narrative? But Chris, like, what did you make of the goal at this point? So they tie it 2-2. Boom. Are you worried? What are your feelings at this moment?
I wasn't worried, but it was annoying to allow them to have something to hang on to, because I thought at 2-1, they're in the air of we have to go for it, or do we limit the goals? Because straight after this, Saka had the other shot where he hit the post. It's very similar to his goal, but like it took away that air of dominance, and I knew exactly where the game was going. It was going the same way it went versus Palace. They were still 1-0 up, and they retreated to their box, and that was against Palace. And against us, I knew they were going to retreat, but it gave them something to hang on to. And no matter how good or bad you think a team is, with something to hang on to, they always do well, especially with a guy like Martinez willing to put their body on the line for a block. McTominay, these guys are very willing to block the ball, and we saw it. They blocked a lot of our shots in the second half after this, but it was annoying. It was just like, we could have avoided this. That's what it wasn't like the Rashford goal. The Rashford goal was like fair dues, but with this is like this didn't have to happen.
Yeah, and look, and of course it sucks with narrative, but then guys, we can kind of go on to the last goal. And look, Leandro Trossard has a huge part to play in this, by the way. And one thing that I really loved with the Zinchenko was, again, I have a lot of arguments on Twitter about Zinchenko and Zinchenko's role, and everybody keeps telling me that Zinchenko must be a player that's an inverted left back. That's all he can do. But it was very clear that when Leandro Trossard came on, he was the one taking the inside channel up. He was the one taking what Zinchenko did in the first half, and Zinchenko just was the one with the wide outlet. And it's no surprise to me. It's because we do zones over formations here at Arsenal, and I think he is very important in this goal in terms of being an option in between the lines to receive. I think Trossard showed excellent quick feet. We know how great he is with his ball usage, how effective he is in those areas. But Zinchenko wasn't the one being deep, by the way. It was Granit Xhaka that was deep, and Zinchenko was providing the overlap. This is why when I see a different plan in place with Trossard, your winger will dictate what your fullback will do. And it doesn't mean that Tierney doesn't have a space in the team, that so and so doesn't have a space in the team, or that Zinchenko must always invert. Because again, we saw this pod happen for the goal when Trossard picks it up in the left hand kind of half space there, and he's driving, and Zinchenko is the one that is out wide. And that kind of outlet with Zinchenko is very important. He makes sure that we have the option there. But with Trossard kind of facing play and running at people in between the lines on that left half space, it's Zinchenko's kind of ball into the middle of the park where Odegaard is running from a third man run. Once again, United can't track it. And he sends a great cross. I think Odegaard, if I'm being really honest, I think he scuffs it. I do think he's going for the shot, but
Yeah.
I don't think he's going in for the cross, but it doesn't matter.
Do
And
you
we
guys
find
think he actually hit it? Because for me, I don't think he touched it, and it just hits the defender.
no, it's a ricochet, but I'm gonna credit him because he goes in with the intent to shoot, and we do find him with that intent. But the ball finds its way to Eddie Nketiah, who makes a really great improvised finish. What did you guys kind of make of that goal, where we basically had a left wing who's on the inside versus a touchline winger, and shock horror, it forces the fullback in a different area of the pitch. I don't understand why people have to be so regimented in their view that we must have a touchline winger on the left wing at all times and the fullback must be inverted at all times. No, what it is if a player moves in one direction, another player will respond. If your left wing moves inside and he's receiving on the inside channel, then your left back will go into the wide channel. That's it. Your left central midfielder will drop deep to cover the space because your winger is taking up the inside channel. And we need to look at the team in these pods and who is complementary, because I refuse to believe that Tierney, in the position that Zinchenko is in, can't deliver a strong cross. I refuse to believe that that can't work. It can work. It is just about finding that moment. And I think Zinchenko does brilliantly here to show how good he is because he does both roles. In the first half, he was a little bit more of the creator in the left half space. In this one, when Trossard came on, he was absolutely more of that traditional overlapping fullback. So what did you guys kind of make of the goal? I'll go to Curran first. What were the emotions like? Limbs?
I mean, I'll be honest. I literally just, it's just relief. It wasn't like it was more relief than anything else. The actual like limbs didn't hit till the reaction started coming in. I think initially it was just sort of like, thank God, because we deserved that win. I don't care what anyone says. That last 20 minutes, we peppered them like anything. Trossard came on. He was very good. His ability in tight spaces to really manipulate the ball and get the ball into positions where we can free up space for other people was great. For me, if you're looking at the goal, I'm just going to point to the fact that I'm going to just expand on what you were saying about the rigidity. I think what football fans have is this very narrow perspective of what players do. A 6 can't be an 8 can't be a 6, a 3 can't be an 11, for example. But it's very much, as you mentioned, covering space, judging movement, rotating out into areas where you can succeed. And the way that we move the ball from Partey, and we've got the screenshots here. From Partey getting the ball out, we then go to Trossard receiving. And you can see Zinchenko out here. You can see him out wide, and you can see that.
But look where Granit Xhaka is, Curran. Sorry, just to
he's covering the space.
Yeah, this is what I mean when I talk about the position and how it forces different players to move to a different spot. And it's not as much to say your one profile is where you're going to stick the entirety of the time. Fine. The differences between Martinelli and Trossard are really simple. Trossard has a lot more horizontal agility with his dribbling. It's just really that simple. Martinelli is a straight line runner. So you're not going to get that. If you introduce a player at left wing who has a little bit more horizontal agility, he's going to face himself in the left half space, and it's going to force your left back to occupy the wide channel. If you have another winger who prefers going out to in and who prefers the straight line running, sure, you're going to ask your fullback to really be in that inside channel, and you're going to ask a different thing of Granit Xhaka. Here, Granit Xhaka is doing the role that he did of old, dropping deep and protecting the back line. And it can happen, and it can work brilliantly. It's not a case that we must have our 8 be the one stretching the pitch. That doesn't have to be the case. and we saw it right here with the goal.
I mean, this is. I remember when we were first signing Jesus Zinchenko. There's a League Cup game at the Emirates, Man City versus Arsenal. I think it's a Foden goal. I know it's Jesus' goal, but it's with Foden as the third man here, and this exact same rotation occurs. Literally the exact same rotation. Zinchenko goes from in to out. In this situation, he receives the ball wide and he cuts back. It's a standard rotation. But the main thing is that you have players able to perform in multiple zones, as well as do multiple roles. So you can have, for example, a Zinchenko drifting between the lines, drifting between the half spaces, and picking up the ball, recycling it, getting the ball into areas where more penetrative passing can occur, or you can create a chance. Or you can have you can have also the wide fullback that's able to overlap and create chances from wide areas, as in this situation. It's not something you go, okay, you either have an overlapper or you have an underlapper, you have an inverted or you have an outward. You can have different variations of these things. It's a very varied roles. So to say that it's one or the other and we can't do both, you're looking at very limited players there, because most players want to kind of, they're not as rigid as that. They want to be able to move between zones. They want to be able to do different things. So in this situation, we have this pass from Trossard, and you can see the space that Trossard receives and then passes into. So you can see the basically Wan-Bissaka again. This is the same thing that we were starting with, basically drawing the off the ball runners inside and really disrupting the structure and pressing the structure to break, because we're not looking at runners controlling the entirety of their box. It's kind of collapsing into one zone because of the danger. And you can see that on the left side, you've got a runner trying to realize, oh crap, we've got Zinchenko on the overlap. We have to look and see what I can do. And that's Wan-Bissaka there. And then we obviously have the Zinchenko cross. He ends up crossing it into, and the main thing I want to point out here is you can see Ødegaard here. If you can see, I don't know if you guys can see, it's on the opposite side. He's just on the D, and he's looking to receive, and you can see the space that has been created by Eddie here. Eddie has dropped their entire line back to cover his run, and you can see the space in front that Ødegaard can hit. That is what was meant to happen here. Ødegaard was meant to basically have a chance from the just on the penalty area, on the penalty spot itself, and get the ball into the back of the net from there. But he ricochets off him, and Eddie, brilliant improvisation, just get something on it and get it in the back of the net, and there we go, 3-2, game done. And we then, the one thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll ask both of you guys about it as well, is the last 5 minutes, the extra time, because I know from Wenger's time, from Emery's time, we wouldn't have sat back. I mean, we wouldn't have tried to manage that game. We would have tried to score a fourth. We were taking it into the corner. We were wasting time. We were doing things that I think good teams need to do. We can't just be this naive team of 2008, 2009, or 2007, where it's constantly, okay, we're trying to perfect football. We're trying to win football games here. And this was a very, very good example of winning a football game after you get the goal. Because that last 5 minutes, Eddie taking into the corner, Trossard getting, doing up a couple of man and then getting the ball out of his feet. That's very good game management. That's not looking to be overly aggressive. Know what you need to do. You're here to get 3 points. So get the 3 points because you've deserved them. So what did you guys make of the game management?
I thought it was brilliant. I'll just really quickly end because I didn't have too much to go beyond the fact that, we sent on Rob Holding for our little classic 4-5-1 kind of sub. And, I just think that really this performance came down to our in possession play. And I don't know if it was necessarily the last 5 minutes, but it was just our play in general. I think that second half was brilliant. It showed maturity for the youngest team in the league with the youngest manager to know exactly what they're doing. I think just going to really Chris's kind of perspective on what you felt was the impact of this game. So not just what you felt coming out of it in terms of the atmosphere that felt significant. It felt significant the way that the players celebrated, doing it against the rivals, Manchester United. It felt like a turning point narrative wise. I think we have been playing phenomenally well for a while. But I think this is one where the media finally step up and acknowledge the title charge credentials. Like, what did you feel this game gave to us? And then I guess just looking forward really quickly to a title charge.
Well, I think the game, like, it just gave an air of undoubtability, like you can't doubt us anymore, because it was always, what about Brighton? What about Newcastle? What about Tottenham? What about United? And we passed them all these tests very easily. I thought, I hate Richard Keys, but I was, yeah, we passed all those tests very well. And I think with Trossard, the way we ended the game was just exactly how, just to show what he's for. The
It's
close
what we didn't
control,
have for
him and
Newcastle.
Eddie, yeah, the composure in the final third, him and Eddie in the corner, just quick passes, quick dribbling, just to keep the ball, and then for him to drop in the half space and turn and face, and there to be the threat of him to cut in and shoot, which forced Wan-Bissaka to come so tight, but also for him to pass wide, just shows the dynamics of the team, how comfortable everyone is being everywhere. And he played out wide, and it was a goal. I think, obviously, I'm so happy Eddie got the goal. Like, would I? No, I wouldn't prefer it to be anyone else but him. Like, I just, for him to cup his ears, because people kept talking bad about him despite doing what he's done. It was always, oh, just a purple patch. We'll go on the next game. Like, he was really the same as Arsenal, the way they were talking about him. And we just passed all these tests very well. And hopefully we consistently pass these tests. But yeah, like, how did I feel after the goal? I lost my voice. Like, I was screaming, this is what we do. This is what we do. Eddie, like, I was doing the celebration. I was doing Rashford celebration. I was calling my United friends. Like, for me, the game was done. Like, after that goal, the game was done. Like, it could have been
When it said
90
3 minutes, I knew it was done. It was
90
like
more
6.
minutes. There could have been 90 more minutes, and I don't see United scoring.
No, I know, no. But I'm just saying, in the moment, it was like 3 minutes.
In the moment, I didn't know how long was left. I didn't see it. So I'm just sitting there seeing the time tick by, and I'm screaming at the ref, like, come on, 3 minutes is enough, 4 minutes is enough. And he finally got it. And then the game was done. Like, even now, my voice hasn't fully recovered. Like, I haven't had a feeling from a goal like that since maybe that Man City first, like that Man City goal, the Saka goal that last season on the first, was probably the only other goal in like maybe a good 5 years that's given me the feeling that I got versus United, because I just don't know what it is, man. It's just 19 games, 50 points. It's near perfection. Like, what else more could we really have done, like, to not be perfect? Like, we've dropped points 3 out of 16 games. Eddie's coming, we've got points. Lokonga came in, we got points. Trossard's now in, we're getting points. Like, what else do we have to do before it's? Because, like, I'm seeing Gary Neville saying we're going to finish third. Like, third, 11 points ahead of United with a game in hand versus City and Everton. City we're going to beat, Everton we're going to beat as well. Like, what else do we really have to do? Like,
well, I think fundamentally, I'll address this. I'll address this really quick. I mean, with the form that he's in, he should be in the team. I mean, it's really quite simple. In terms of other people getting minutes, I think you're going to talk about ESR when Gabby Jesus comes back in a month. I think when you have the Europa League come back, you're going to see a lot more rotation kind of in the team, both in the Premier League, but in multiple competitions. We're going to need the squad to step up at this point, because we are also the team with the most starters having played consistently in the Premier League.
7 people have played all the games or something like that.
I was just going to say 7 of our 11 have played every single game, and that's not sustainable. It is scary. It is quite scary, and I think that you're going to look at the squad being a lot more important later in the season. I think it'll become more of an issue in March. Again, that's also where, ironically, I want to add my title predictions, because I need to see how these new players are able to adapt, because we're going to need them, and we're going to need them to
And there is
start.
a lot. Sorry to cut you off, but there is a lot of games to be played till March. Like a lot of people are already
Yeah.
saying, like, how many points will we get in so and so period? But we've got the FA Cup this week. We've got Europa. Obviously, we don't know who we have, but we're guaranteed 2 games in Europa, and we still have 2 games. Well, 1 game in Everton where we don't know when it will be. So
Yeah, we have to make up another game. So there are games to play, and I think that it's naive to assume that you're going to keep the 7 players in the 11 throughout the entirety of the season. Very
yeah,
naive, and it's the only team to have done that. So I think we're going to be looking forward to that. But we've been going now an hour and a half. It was a longer review. We've been away for a while.
had to be
We're
as
going to
well.
wrap it up, guys. We're definitely going to be having a lot of content coming back for you guys. We'll talk transfer market stuff, absolutely, because we've just got the Kiwi in as well. There's potentially other people coming in, and we'll have a talk about that. We'll have a talk about the midfield situation, whether or not we need it. It seems to be something of interest. But guys, thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with it. I'm going to make sure to do my thing. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe before you guys head out. It does really help the channel. So if you guys could like, we would really appreciate that. Of course, you can find all the socials down below. So at GeorgeV_AFC, you can find Chris at CKFTBL, and of course, Curran at Curran BOP. And we are Ball Over Passion here on YouTube, or at BOP Footy on the Twitter. So, guys, thank you so much. We hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a huge game. It makes it 11 points with the game in hand on third. And of course, we keep that 5-point gap with Manchester City, which is absolutely incredible for this stage of the season. Let's take it game by game. We're going to have the City review and preview up for you guys this week. And then next week, we will be doing a transfer pod. So if you guys enjoy that, we definitely will be coming back with a lot more fun transfer stuff that we can maybe get into, particularly on deadline day. We might get another right back in Ivan Fresneda, who I've said constantly is the jewel of the transfer window. Really like that boy, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So thank you guys so much for everybody sticking with us, and we'll catch you guys on the next watch along with the review and the preview coming soon. So peace, everybody. Have a good one.
Peace.